Good afternoon. My name is Brielle. Welcome to History 490, African American Women's History. Hopefully you are in the right class. So today I just kind of want to do a bit of an introduction to the course. We're going to talk about a few of the people who we will be reading about. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I don't want to give anything away. But I figured that we would start with just kind of a broad question. Why study the history of African American women? And I'm going to give this to you guys, and then we can kind of talk about it together. So does anybody? Alex.
Because their voices have been largely ignored in big general tellings of American history.
Because we have very real African American women today that are influenced and shaped by these histories that maybe we don't fully understand.
And there really are huge, like, African American women really did make a huge difference in the creation and establishment of a lot of our societal cultures today.
Also, just like talking, it's good to talk about the combination of like African American and African American women, because African Americans were oppressed. Then that takes on a different form, and it's like African American women too.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, so it's a history that has been repressed, rewritten, condensed, and it's a history that's been recounted by those in the majority. So a lot of times when that happens, major events, really significant people are not included because it's not being told by the groups of people who are actually living it. There's also potential bias, and then it's in any area of history for a group of people who are marginalized, it's really important to spend time recognizing and acknowledging their feats, their struggles, their experiences. So that's kind of the premise of this course. So up here I've got 5 photos of American women, white American women. How many of you in this room know 3 out of the 5 photos that are up here? Raise your hands. If you do. How about 2? We'll start with 2. Okay. Wow, I'm really surprised. Okay, so now I feel like I have to teach like 2 classes. Okay, how about, and does anybody know 4 of the 5 women on the screen?
Alex, you look so disappointed.
I can't
Okay. So up in the corner we have Elizabeth Cady Stanton.
Yeah.
Okay. In the middle is Amelia Earhart. We have Sandra Day O'Connor. Margaret Sanger, which I could see, maybe you would know who she is, but maybe you haven't seen a photo of her. And then Eleanor Roosevelt. Okay, so the next slide is a photo of African American women. How many of you know 1 of the people on the screen? Cool, just that great. Okay, 2 people. 3 people. 4 people. 5, do you know all of them?
No.
No?
I got a max out of 4.
Okay, cool. Well, you know more. That's awesome. Okay, so we have Ida B. Wells, and then Harriet Jacobs. That's Angela Davis, Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, Audre Lorde, and Sojourner Truth. So that kind of puts things into perspective a little bit. I guess not for Sarah, but just that we have seen and we are able to recognize specific groups of women in history, and then others not so much. And that's kind of also like a big part of this class, is being able to recognize the feats of African American women and their achievements and who they are, and not just, and we focus a lot, throughout your high school and middle school, it's like Harriet Tubman and Rosa Parks. Those are who we know. So I think it's really important to kind of go a little bit beyond that because there are so many other women who are really important. And while doing research on this topic, I kept like scrolling, there's like so many, it felt really difficult to even select like the key people because there are so many women who did so much for, civil rights, for abolition, and yeah, so moving on. So the course objectives, so this is in your syllabus, but I figured we could just kind of go over it pretty quickly. So in this class, I would like for you guys to examine the experiences of African American women throughout American history. We will discuss themes and issues including race, class, family life, work, and sexuality. And then, in addition to that, we'll analyze the ways in which white and black Americans have attempted to define, control, and represent black American women. And that's a really big part of this class, because that's a really big part of black American women's experiences, is largely, their stories haven't really been able to have been told by them. And then finally, we will hopefully gain a deeper understanding of black women's experiences, their needs, and their goals for the future. Okay, so we will be reading 4 texts this semester. The first one is Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. And it's written by Harriet Ann Jacobs. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. She was born in 1813. She was born into slavery in North Carolina. She was an African American woman who, she's a wild story. She escaped slavery, lived in her grandmother's basement for 7 years after that. She literally could not leave. She's in this really, almost like a coffin, maybe a little bit more space, but was in there for 7 years until she could finally escape. And so her pseudonym is Linda Brent, and that is what she wrote Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl under. Her writing was a key part of the abolitionist movement, and that was kind of why she wrote it. And then people kind of forgot about it, and then a few decades later, it emerged again and was rewritten. And yeah, but basically it's really a great read. It's one of the first books to address the struggle for freedom by female slaves. It also explores themes of sexual abuse, sexual harassment, what it meant to be a female slave, the relationship with the mistress, the relationship with the slave owner. And then it also shows the ways that women wanted to protect their roles as mothers and just people, just women. So that's why that's pretty, it's important, and we're gonna read it. Okay, the next one is Henrietta Lacks. So she was born in 1920. She is famous for the HeLa cell line, which was basically cancer cells. Was a source of cancer cells, a cell line. It was the first immortalized cell line and one of the most important cell lines in medical research. So there's a bit of controversy about this. How many of you have either read the book or seen the movie? Yeah, it's been more talked about. It's actually kind of a more recent controversy, historically speaking. So there was no consent obtained to culture her cells, and her family was not compensated for their extraction or use. So in 2013, researchers published the DNA sequence of the genome of the strain of her cells, and there were objections from her family about releasing that genetic information. So it became a privacy issue. And what was really kind of the biggest, I think, issue was that it didn't. So what's so important about this is the valuable contribution it made to African Americans' presence in medical research, and that wasn't acknowledged. And especially given the time period, the fact that she's a woman, there's a lot of different factors that go into perhaps why she didn't get the recognition she deserved. At the time, the doctors didn't have to ask for consent for things like that, but obviously those laws have changed. Yeah, so we'll read her book, and it's a really, really amazing story too. All right. Next, probably my favorite person ever, Maya Angelou. She was born in 1928. She is an American poet, singer, writer, and civil rights activist. She wrote a lot. She's written a lot of different things, but probably her most famous works is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Has anybody read that? Yeah, it's amazing. I literally read it in 2 days. And so she's really significant as well because she reveals aspects of her personal life, and she's kind of like not like a protector, but her voice has become, she's very representative of like Black women's experiences. Like Oprah Winfrey read her book and was like, oh my gosh, there's someone out there who had the same experience as me. Like she's, she grew up in the South. Under her like grandmother's wing. Her parents weren't really in the picture until a little bit later. She moved around a lot, so she's been really respected as a spokesperson for Black culture and for women, and her works, have been considered, like she's one of the key, if somebody were to ask me, recommend one person or book to read, that would, be a good indicator of like African American women, I'd probably say Maya Angelou. So we'll read about her. And then finally, does anybody know who Audre Lorde is? Cool. Yeah, she's a little bit more you would probably need to take either like feminist political theory class or maybe sexuality or something to have maybe read her stuff or heard about her. But I think she's definitely worth mentioning. She was born in 1934. She is an American writer, intersectional feminist, and civil rights activist. Does anybody know what intersectional feminism is? It's kind of in the name.
Yeah, I feel like
You want to give it a shot?
define it. Yeah, just feminism based around sort of like the life experience of someone maybe who's not white and heterosexual, like the ways that feminism is conducted when you're also taking into account if you're Black or if you're Latinx or if you are homosexual or all those things, and the way that it sort of shifts because of those.
Yeah, so basically, intersectionality is a term. If you're not familiar with it, you'll become familiar with it. It's basically recognizing the complex ways in which race, class, gender, and sexuality intertwine, and the discrimination that can be felt depending on, what your experience is. So her poetry, she's really, really famous for her poetry. She expresses a lot of anger and outrage at social injustices. And she largely deals with issues related to civil rights, feminism, and the exploration of the Black female identity. So Black feminism, this is like one of the things that she's pretty, not the face of, but that she's discussed widely and would be something that most people would probably associate with her. And basically it's the school of thought stating that sexism, class, and oppression, gender, racism are inextricably bound together, and the way these concepts relate to each other is called intersectionality, which we talked about. So Lorde she encouraged Black feminists to, rather than fear politics, like join politics, because that's the only way in which Black women will be able to improve their roles in society. That was kind of her thing. And she's a lesbian, so she did a lot of civil rights work for Black lesbians who are like totally, that's like a really marginalized group. So those are a few of the people that we will be discussing over this semester. Are there any questions, Bailey?
Harriet Ann Jacobs, I know we've talked about this, but
Yeah.
is it the same Harriet Jacobs that was in the story with Rachel Davis?
Yes.
Okay, just
Yeah,
making sure.
That's the
Cool.
same, yeah, the same one where
Yeah.
her master, so she had children by her master. And he was like on a, so when she escaped to the north, he was like on the hunt for her for like decades. Like it was, so she's just a really wild story, but she's everything is okay.
When you talk about Henrietta Lacks, are you going to read the book about her
Yes.
as well? Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna read the book. I actually have only read like portions of it, so I'm excited to read the whole thing through. So I think it's really good.
It's good. It's really good.
Yeah.
good.
Cool. Yes.
Do you plan to bring it all the way up to like modern day? Or is it?
You know, I know. I kind of, yeah, we'll probably mention some, women of today. Like, I think, Michelle Obama, she just came out with a book that I know Oprah was like, this is crazy good. But yeah, I kind of wanted to keep it like from the beginning up until more like second, third wave feminism. But I think, yeah, it would be like to be current in the times, especially, like right now, the school, University of Mississippi, is gonna change. So the current name of the School of Journalism is this guy who is racist, and they're thinking about changing it and calling it Ida B. Wells, naming it after Ida B. Wells, who was a really amazing journalist. So, there's definitely things today that are being talked about, like where can we recognize Black women? How can we recognize them? How can we include them more so in our curriculum? So I think that's still really important and should be talked about. So yeah, I think, I'll be president. Anybody else?
All right. Great. Thank you.